Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Andrew Wynn, and as was mentioned, I'm the co-founder and the CEO of a company called Ascend. We're a partner of Resource Pro, and Ascend is a software and AI company that helps with all things accounting and finance automation for insurance businesses, brokers, MGAs, wholesalers, and carriers. I know we're on day 2, so I'm going to try to make this pretty interactive. I have lots of questions for folks, so start getting ready. And Uli has tickets, so we're going to try to get someone in here to win those prizes today. So one of the first things that we see at Ascend is that insurance teams in the back office and in operations typically struggle with time-intensive and low-value work. You can see some of the impacts that has, and according to McKinsey, insurance has made no significant reductions in administrative costs, especially viewed relative to other industries like telecom and automotive, over the past 15 years. That's not to say, this slide can be a little triggering. That's not to say that these aren't important things. These things are actually critical to your business. They are what's needed to make the business work. However, they may not necessarily be the best use of your talent's time. So they're often critical, but not a core competency. I don't know how many brokers here, or how many of the top 5, top 10 brokers became the top 10 brokers because of being the best at administrative functions. I would argue, that's an important part of their journey, but they become the best brokers because they spend the most time with their clients, because they understand their clients. And so double-clicking into what Ascend does and what we work with insurance and accounting and finance teams, so we typically see this low value and time-intensive work inside of the finance and accounting orgs. And that means a bunch of things. So we see down at the bottom of the pyramid here, this is where a ton of time and resources and people are spent inside of insurance, accounting, and finance teams. And what that does is it comes at the cost of this really high value strategic work. So you can see this bulk of time and resources spent at the bottom, and not as much time spent on this really, really important work around financial planning and analysis, strategic finance, pricing, capital allocation, M&A. That's obviously a huge thing for insurance businesses. And what's not on here, which may be relevant in the coming months, is things like weathering a macroeconomic downturn or trend, which what we're seeing and talking about in the news. I'm curious here, how many folks have in their offices, brokers have folks whose job it is to collect and open and deposit checks? You could just raise your hand. So it's a good chunk of folks. And how many people would say that is the best? Keep your hand up if you think that's the best use of that person's talent to be doing that. So no hands stayed up there. So it's kind of an example of, hey, that's not to say this isn't important. Obviously, we got to cash that check, right? But there are better ways to do these things and a better use of folks' time. Which kind of leads to some of the other things. It's not just accounting. We see this across servicing, accounting, operations staff. All of these things are, again, hugely, hugely important critical tasks, but they're not necessarily the core competency or the best use of your time and talent. I think Brittany yesterday in the transportation session did a really good job talking about how at AP, they've automated a lot of these things in the highly transactional transportation business because they know that they have a better use of time talking to their truckers on the phone rather than doing things like faxing endorsements. And so these are the kinds of things that we see of being, again, critical but not necessarily a core competency or the best use of your talent's time. Everyone knows this. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here. I think we have a whole session on this coming up after this. Insurance is definitely experiencing a talent crunch. I think it was in the keynote yesterday or one of Dan's surveys, but it was 63% of insurance leaders cite talent as a main issue. I'm curious, another quick question. How many folks here have college-age kids? How many of those, keep your hands up if those kids are going to go into insurance? And then I was going to say, I had a third question, which is, and if those folks are going to go into insurance operations? I think it would have been even lower, right? And so, this talent crunch is really going to come for the folks in this room. It's going to be very, very real. And so how do we overcome that? It's not we're not going to do these things. Again, they're critical. And so this is where we get into technology. And really this should say, this is a bad title, it shouldn't say the AI advantage, it should say the AI and expertise advantage, so that everyone here can scale themselves, so that folks can do more with technology, and also to be able to create jobs and work that wants to attract those college-age kids into insurance operations so that we can continue to grow and sustain and improve the industry. What we typically see in kind of going over the history of AI, and I know this was talked a lot about yesterday, so again, I'll try to keep it brief here, is that insurance sees innovation in 20-year waves. I stole this slide from somebody else, so I don't actually know what what tariff books are. I'm a little too young for that, but I'm sure some folks in here may. And then, so we had tariff books sort of starting, and then mainframes to microcomputers to personal computers. And we're really trying to figure out what is going to be the wave of innovation in this current 20-year wave, starting in kind of the 2010 going through where we are now. We've all seen really great software move to the cloud. We've seen lots of point solution apps. We've seen insurtechs trying to reinvent insurance. I think that one has sort of proven to not be the wave of innovation. But over the past few years, since really 2022, it seems like it's going to be AI, right? I'm curious, how many folks here are using AI in some capacity in their business today? And how many of you would call yourself a digital broker? I know that result was like the lowest. And what about with folks who are I think the other question in the Slido yesterday was experimenting and piloting AI. Does anyone want to just share an example? You don't need to come up to the microphone. You can just speak loudly of some of the examples or ways you're doing that in your organization. You'll get a raffle ticket. You won't make me embarrassed. Please.
We have Copilot.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, in the background, we're piloting 2 places to get ad hoc pieces in the process, so comparing policies so that a human doesn't have to do it and giving you where it's lacking or problem endorsements. But we want to make sure who we partner with has a human in the loop.
Yeah.
So we're about to do a proof of concept for 2 companies on ad hoc things to bring into it, where the main servicer using it doesn't know who the company is. So as the technology progresses, it's hidden in the background and we can change it, and they would just think it's an enhancement.
Oh, that's smart. So you can sort of get that test and get the best of both. Yeah.
Our company has a internally developed system for AI, and it's integrated in most of our office platforms, Excel, Teams, things like that. And we have the ability to modify anything. On the personal line side, we use it for, we can address coverage gaps. We can really, like she said, look at the contracts, do comparisons, analysis, do recommendations, and it's constantly regenerating and
That's very cool.
from us. So
Cool.
it's becoming better every day that we use it.
Wow, that's great. Very cool. Anyone else? Any other thing on Dane?
Our company, the broker, we're testing a tool right now to take an insurance application, which they often don't know how to fill out, or they put the wrong NAICS code in or something, and it creates lots of problems and might disqualify them. So we're taking in an assumed application based off of their website. We go and look at all of the information we can, Crunchbase, public databases, and then we try to compare what their submission or application might have been with what our assumptions are about them to see, hey, maybe we can actually qualify them for one of our products.
Cool. That's awesome. So it sounds like there are some very real insurance applications of AI beyond just emailing and ChatGPT. So we have policy checking, we have application review with public data sources. So I think we are starting to see this to be the case. I think AI will be the defining factor, obviously not just of insurance, but of this macro wave of innovation as well. And so, I still think we're in the really early days of this. I think these examples of policy checking, application reviews are very cool insurance-specific examples, but there's so much more we can do, and you only have to look out to other industries and the things that we see every day as good examples of where AI is still in its early days. So this is pretty out, it's moving so fast, this gets outdated so quickly, but we've gone from sort of radio dispatching to algorithm-based dispatching. TV Guide has gone to Netflix recommendations. Stock trading isn't a bunch of guys yelling at each other in a room. It's all algorithmic. And so it's worth starting to think about other ways beyond policy checking, application reviews, in which that is relevant to us in the insurance industry. And so, again, I know this was talked about yesterday, so I won't spend too much time here, but the sort of evolution of AI has gone from algorithms where it's very, very deterministic. It's a rule. The goal of that is just driving efficiency, being able to do things a little bit more effectively. So the insurance example is read this contract and find the liquor exclusions. I think we've been able to do that for a while. And so that algorithmic or deterministic AI has moved to prediction-based AI. So you're getting an outcome or a prediction, and the goal of that is to be more accurate. So with prediction-based AI, we're seeing things like predict the probability that this claim goes to formal litigation. Followed where we kind of are in the middle of the heyday of generative AI or GPT, things like that, and that's where you're giving data and prompts, and the nature of these tasks are very open-ended. You don't need to say, give me a prediction. You can say, what do you think about that, right? And so it's much, much more open-ended. It's still in a pretty early phase, but obviously lots of different things, ways of using this. And an insurance example might be write a letter explaining why there's no coverage for this claim. I think what we saw in the BCG partners presentation yesterday with that AI support is a great example of generative AI where it's doing a lot of these things for, helping you do these things. It's not doing them for you, and it's doing a lot of that reasoning that we as people may have had to do before. The next step, which isn't on here, but what we touched on, is agentic AI. So that's now taking from generative AI to agentic AI, where AI agents not just help you, but they go and do the thing, right? And that's still also in its pretty early days. It's not for complex tasks. It's not going to say, hey, go. You can't tell an agentic AI, hey, go meet a client and do risk management and sell them this policy. That's impossible. You may be able to tell an agentic AI to, hey, go to this carrier website and get this document for me so that I don't have to. So we're still in the very early days of agentic AI, but we're starting to see that and getting those agents to go out and do things. And I'll touch on a little bit more of applications for that we're seeing this today. I'm curious, how many people agree with this? Yeah, I think that video with Ali Miller yesterday really touched on this. So it's really expertise, especially in, again, regulated, complex industry like insurance, with AI that's going to be the secret sauce, the magic combination. Those agentic AIs aren't going to come and do all the work that we do and the producers do and account managers do anytime soon, maybe never, but we still are a long way off from this. I know another question yesterday was the guy from Applied mentioned his ChatGPT story where he had like the mind blown when the first time he saw ChatGPT. I'm curious if anyone, maybe folks experimenting with AI inside of their business, has kind of the opposite, when you gave AI an insurance task and you hoped it would do it and it didn't. It kind of dropped the ball. Does anyone have kind of the anti-AI, or not anti-AI, but the opposite case? Would you mind sharing your example? Yeah. Yeah. He said it's like giving a task to a kid. Yeah. 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 Yeah, exactly. So it's like giving a task to a kid. You ask it to do something, you don't get quite what you want, so it's easier just to do yourself. Does anyone have another specific example of where, yeah? Yeah, very general answers. Yeah, I would imagine in this sort of, in this case, write a letter explaining why there's no coverage for this claim, you might get like 3 sentences of fluff, right? It's not actually why there's no coverage. It's because coverage is determined by policy, blah, 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 and it doesn't actually tell you why. Any other third example of this sort of why AI has kind of dropped the ball?
It was a surplus lines carrier, but then it was actually
Admitted.
So-
Okay. If folks didn't hear that, the example was there was an AI-generated proposal where it said the advantage of this carrier is it's an admitted carrier when it was actually a surplus lines carrier. So that's not going to work, right? And so we are still in this early days, and someone with expertise knows that, right? Probably your average insured doesn't know that difference, or they don't know it super well or what it means. And that's, again, why it's so important to have AI with expertise. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of these AI human-in-the-loop expertise use cases where we're seeing this from our perspective, and with Resource Pro as well. So people already talked about policy checking. I think that's a great example of where, again, a super critical use case where it's AI can be a great complement if there's a human in the loop, as folks talked about earlier. Another area, again, this is what we're familiar with, is accounting automation. So commission processing, invoicing, accounts payable reconciliation. These can be huge documents, right? Tens of thousands of rows in spreadsheets, often data entry. AI can sometimes be better at that than people, right? And certainly more scalable and efficient. Everyone here, I'm not even going to ask you to raise your hand, has obviously made a typo, right? So those are the types of things where AI can help mitigate those challenges. And then there's client support too. This one is maybe a little bit controversial of where do you want how do you want your clients getting support? Maybe after hours, an AI chatbot that can access certificates is great if someone comes in. But if someone has a claim, probably not, right? So there's a balance of where AI can help. And so when we look at that and try to evaluate different ways in which AI can again, with expertise, help, we see a few different advantages. One is reading documents, data, just simply taking data off a document and putting it maybe into an AMS or a policy admin system or a different spreadsheet or a different format. AI is really good at that because it's not having to think about things. It's not having to be deterministic. So what we typically see is AI is able to take data off a spreadsheet or compare two different sources of objective data with 90+% accuracy. That's probably, that's really good, right? We know Resource Pro experts who have been doing this for decades can achieve really high 99% plus accuracy, but that's because they're experts, right? Not everyone can do that, and it's also a huge amount of training that goes into that. The next advantage that we see with applications of AI is speed or scale. So AI tasks are able to be kind of indefinitely scaled. You're able to do much more faster. And this sometimes matters. It sometimes doesn't. Using that example of taking data off of a commission spreadsheet to reconcile your books at the end of the month, you don't need to do that super fast. You only close your books once a month, right? But one of the advantages of this is it allows you to be much more scalable. So you're able to have much more efficiency, right? That's a topic of this, efficiency and profitability, with less resources because the AI is able to do more than any one person could in a single task. And then the other thing which relates to that, and again, the topic here is efficiency and profitability, is AI is generally, in the right places, able to reduce costs for certain tasks. Obviously, everyone here is thinking about ways to make their business more efficient, more profitable, more operationally in tune, and so AI can be a great place to do that. The example of this is AI chatbots typically cost about 50 cents per conversation to resolve a ticket, whereas a human agent might cost $5 to $15 per conversation. Great if it's something super transactional. Can I have an ID card? Things like that. Again, not so great if it's, hey, I had a claim, I need some help. So great places where you can help reduce that cost of labor. And so the use case that we're here to talk a little bit about today is direct bill commission processing. And so this is where Ascend and Resource Pro really come together with the software and AI of Ascend and the expertise of Resource Pro to deliver an end-to-end solution that takes the best of technology and the best of expertise and brings that together to deliver brokerage as a solution that can, again, enhance profitability and operational efficiency. So we typically see a few different challenges with direct bill commission processing. How many folks here are familiar, work in accounting or finance or know about direct bill commission processing? A good chunk. And how many of those folks, think it's like a kind of a pain of a process? Maybe even more hands that time. So it's weird. But what this is for the folks who don't really know or are less familiar is every month, a carrier who's direct billed and insured collects the money from the insured, all the insureds that you've produced for. They send you a deposit, obviously. Hey, here's $10,000 and a file. It could be a PDF. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be a mailed statement. It could be one of those funny-looking benefit statements that looks like it's come off one of those printers where you tear it away. It could come in any format. And then it's your job as an agency, as a brokerage, to say, great, we got $10,000 from the carrier. Is that the right amount? Is that what we expect? And so that's where, this is a great application of where AI and technology and expertise can come in. So the challenges we see are going out and getting those statements can be very time-consuming. Some carriers download them through Ivans. Many don't. Some carriers send them to your email. Some don't. Some make you come in and make you log in to get those statements. So typically, folks have people inside of their organizations going and just logging into carrier portals every day looking for a statement. Maybe it's there, maybe it's not. If you have many agency codes, then they're doing that a lot. The next thing, and that can obviously slow things down, right, when you have to go and do that. The next thing is all these statements are very different in format, and thus the ability to process them becomes very challenging. What we typically see is that different folks have outlined people on their staff to do specific carriers because they get very comfortable knowing, hey, this is how Cigna sends statements, and I know how to read that. I have no idea how to read a Hartford statement, but I can figure out Cigna. And so all of these statements are very inconsistent. And then once you get those, you have to enter those into your AMS, compare to what's in the AMS, make sure that what you received from the carrier is the correct amount to what was billed and expected from your production team. And so, and if it's not, then there's a whole workflow to figure out, okay, did we get commission for a policy we shouldn't have? Did we get the wrong commission? Did we not renew a policy we should have? And sort of triage and work through those exceptions. Some results of this process today is it's sometimes slow to close your books. At the end of the month, there's typically a mad dash, once you've gotten those final commission statements to be able to close your books at the end of the month. Sometimes you have unapplied commissions that run through and you don't actually know, and you kind of have this balance outstanding that's unapplied. The other thing is it can cause late or incomplete producer commissions. How many folks have gotten yelled at by a producer or questioned about the wrong commission? I think that's probably, I think they just do that anyway, even if it is right. So, this is a loud laugh from Embroker over here. Late or incomplete producer commissions is obviously, we joke, but it's a real problem. And then incomplete or late reporting or inaccurate reporting for executive teams who are trying to use these inputs to run the business and make strategy decisions. And so, again, this is where we think people and AI are better together. There's a bunch of different ways to try and solve this problem. There's doing it manually only, right? That can be doing it in-house. That can be, working with other folks to do it. It can be really great initially. It can still be very human dependent, right? People get sick. People who know the Sigma statement might change jobs. And then you have to retrain. So you still have a lot of those same challenges to do around the time to train people, turnover, onboarding, management. But doing things manually is a pretty reliable way to get the work done. Then you have the opposite, right? What if you just did software only and you said, hey, I'm going to have AI and software do all of this. I'm going to buy a magic bullet. Turns out there are no magic bullets. So it might be really good at automating some of those workflows, right? Maybe it'll be really good at, again, some of the things we talked about where AI is great, comparing the statements with what's in the AMS. But what happens if we have an exception, right? If there is a policy where there's a commission that came in where there's no policy for it in the AMS, what is the software going to do? Is it just going to create that policy in the AMS without talking to an account manager? I don't know, right? There's a lot of different ways that you could do that, but without having the expertise to know what that next step should be, they're probably going to be wrong, right? Or you're going to be left with the same problem that you had in the manual situation where you just have some percentage of revenue that's never actually reconciled because it doesn't know what to do with it. So it still requires people involved. And so if you're buying software only and you're paying for software and you expect it to solve your problems, you may end up also still having to staff and pay for software and staffing. Or what we think is the best model, again, with expertise and software, is the joint solution that folks like Ascend and ResourcePro are able to offer, which is software that does a lot of the stuff that AI is really good at. Things like going out and fetching statements. Things like comparing and reading those documents accurately. Things like flagging those exceptions in a really clean manner so that the expertise and the experts can come in and just work on the triage. They can just work on the problems that need to be addressed as opposed to spending 80–90% of their time just trying to figure out what those things are. So we really see that the people plus software combination not only gives you the best results in terms of ability to close books, ability to go faster, ability to scale indefinitely, but is also the lowest true cost to own. You're paying for some software and you're paying for some people, and together you're paying for the software and the expertise that's going to get the job done. That's going to do what you hired it to do and allow you to, again, move forward with these other parts of your business that are the sort of human-only, very important things to focus on. So a little bit of how our solution with ResourcePro works. It's called Direct Bill Complete. And I think I'm going to finish a little early, so people will get coffee soon. It's human-in-the-loop automation with AI. So step one is Ascend will agentically go out and collect those statements from carrier websites. So we'll take your logins, we'll take your MFA, we'll go out and we'll go get those statements where we can. Maybe sometimes we can't. Maybe a website changes or MFA changes. Great. Now it's going to fall back to an expert who's able to do those things. Number two is we're going to take those documents, we're going to pull all the data off of them. Again, it doesn't matter if it's that weird benefit statement, if it's the mailed statement, if it's just a nice clean spreadsheet. We're going to read all of that with that high accuracy AI, and we're going to auto match that, and we're going to compare that to what's in your AMS. So it's also going to be pretty smart. It's not going to just say, hey, is it the exact match? It's going to say, this looks pretty similar. So my name is Andrew Wynn. My wife's name is Nicola Fleischer. Let's say in the AMS it says Andrew Wynn and Nicola Fleischer, but let's say on the carrier statement it says Andrew and Nicola Wynn. A simple, not deterministic matching will say, that's not the same. But an AI-powered matching will say, hey, that looks pretty similar. Let's check the policy number. Let's check the effective date. Let's check the policy type. Let's look at the commission amount. And if all of those things are within a similar sort of reasoning that we as people would do to say, yeah, that looks right, it's going to automatically match that. But if it starts to look a little bit weird and it's not able to automatically match that, then what happens is that gets created as an exception. And that exception goes to ResourcePro, who are the experts to know what's going on here. And they're able to triage and work through those exceptions in a really expert manner. And these are folks who are part of your business, they're in your business, they know your business, they know if something is billed incorrectly, they can work with the account manager to resolve that, fix the issues. And then once that's been done, that gets written back into Ascend, and then Ascend can enter those commission transactions into the AMS. ResourcePro will finalize those statements, post those reconciled statements, and provide analytics as part of their broader offering and engagement with you. So again, this is a great example where the Ascend AI software is able to do a lot of this highly repetitive work that lends itself well to AI, whereas and Resource Pro's expert teams are able to do the things where AI is not able to do a good job today. And so what does it look like? What are the benefits? It automates about 65% of the process end to end. So what was typically, 65% of the work that was typically done by people is now being done by computers. So we've talked about some of the efficiencies associated with that. What that generally translates to is cost reductions of comparable alternatives, which might be software only, people only, to about 20 to 50%, while giving you a better outcome. So a lot of speed, a lot of scalability. It doesn't matter if you acquire a new agency. You don't have to staff up 10 more people. The system can go and take those things in automatically. And then about 95% at scale, the system learns of transactions are able to be automatically matched between what's in that commission statement to what's in the AMS without any human involvement. And so that's our direct bill complete offering with Resource Pro. If that's something that you all are interested in learning about, you can check it out. Check it out here or talk to your client rep. I'll leave this up for a second so folks can take a picture. But I think we have 5 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take those, or we can get coffee early. All right. Easy. Thank you all for having me. It's great to be here. It's great to meet so many new people and see some familiar faces.